Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
Hey everybody, it's Tuesday night. We're live. It's another live Wicked Horror Show. As always, I'm Kevin, and I'm also joined by Tony Has Nine Fingers.
What is going on, people?
And we're also joined by Angel from That Strange Show. What's going on, Angel?
What is going on, Tony?
And me. And we have a very special guest. I had the pleasure of meeting him at Monster Expo out in this past fall. It's a fun show that's growing every year, it seems like. So it's pretty cool. And we have DW from DARKSIDE Media. What's going on, DW?
Howdy, fellas. How you doing tonight?
Pretty good. And I stumbled across your work at a different con out in New Hampshire, I want to say. You weren't at that con. Someone else was selling at your booth. And right. I picked up the Lovecraft, the paranormal, LOVECRAFT P.I, A Shot in the Dark, the like the hardcover, like graphic novel, the full series. And I dug it a lot. I go through these phases where I'll find things that pique my interest and then I'll just go all in. Right. So like,
well, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So it just happened to come across at the same time that I was really starting to get into some more Lovecraft stuff. And I rewatched Lovecraft Country. I was rebuying like stuff on in hardcover and like, you know, just things here and there, like listening to audiobooks while I work. Right. Listen to a lot of the Lovecraft stuff. And I was like, oh, this sounds awesome. He's a paranormal detective, and I'm all about that too. I used to be part of a paranormal investigation group because I'm a nerd, and it totally, and I dug it so much that I actually 3D printed you a Cthulhu for.
Did, yes.
I knew you were going to be at that show, and I printed one for you and one for another guy that I bought a Cthulhu hoodie from, and I handed him off because I was like, hey, I respect your stuff. Here you go. And so I really dig it.
Thank you.
Yeah, going into Lovecraft P.I. and all of your other works, if looking at your history, you didn't start with comics. You've started way back in the day in film and stuff. How did that whole progression come to be?
You mean going just from film into comics itself?
Yeah. I mean, it looks like it's been you worked in film for quite a while.
Right.
It seems like, and you've directed and you've acted and produced, and you did like art department for a lot of movies. And then to end up here, which is, obviously a little bit different, but I guess it's a even cooler way to tell a story because you don't have to worry about a big budget.
Right. Right.
But yeah, so how did that whole thing come to be?
Yeah. So when I left LA, I ended up moving back east and worked making movies here for quite a while. And I was also traveling quite a bit. So basically I was hired to go ahead and, take over productions, fix them, whether it was editing or come in and reorganize the crew because there was possibly like a mutiny that was going to happen. And so it was my job to basically just take over that aspect of trying to fix projects that were, on their way out and try to save them before, they would collapse. And after a while, that got kind of, a little old just because you don't make a lot of friends doing that job.
Yeah, for sure.
And, I got into making movies to make movies, not to, patch somebody else's work together. So, and I had always wanted to direct and tell stories and so on and so forth. And I had always been a big fan of comics and collected when I was a kid, and then more independent stuff when I had gotten older. And when I was trying to make this life transition, especially when I was moved to the East Coast, it's not Los Angeles anymore. So a buddy of mine had come to me and had said he had a screenplay they had turned into a comic book. And he's like, yeah, this is kind of like, I don't know if this is the new thing, but it seems to be what people are doing now. And this was back in probably the early 2000s, like early to mid 2000s. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool idea. It makes sense. It's storyboards, basically, and then I've sold scripts before out in LA. It's not the easiest thing to do in the world. And, you're trying to sell somebody on something they haven't even read yet. Whereas, they have to take the time out to actually read it. Where if you show them a comic book or a few pictures out of a scene, they instantly get the, indication of like what you're trying to tell as a story.
Mhm.
So, and since I had made my own pictures and had done a lot of storyboard work myself, I was like, well, it just seems like the perfect way to kind of, get back into the industry, but do it kind of more my way, which has always been the way I've approached, making films anyways, and how I even got into the industry.
Yeah.
So a buddy of mine, and we were kicking around some ideas, and we came up with, this, H.P. Lovecraft, around 2010, his stuff became public domain. And so we're just kind of kicking around the idea about why not we call this character Lovecraft P.I. It won't be H.P. Lovecraft. It'll be this character, Ward Lovecraft. And, so he's kind of the polar opposite. H.P. was a shut-in, didn't do much. He did a lot of traveling within New England, but he was, he wrote horror stories and stayed pretty much within the Rhode Island area and had very, high opinions of all sorts of things, including folks. So what I wanted to do, but the cool thing is that what he did do is he also had an intense knowledge of Latin at an early age, astronomy, chemistry, so he did like knowledge. So I love taking that kind of aspect of HP's work as well as his stories itself. And then basically did the polar opposite with our character. Like our character, Ward Lovecraft, ended up serving in World War One. He was a doctor with his close friend Herbert West in Miskatonic University. This all takes place during like the 1900s, the 1920s and 30s. So that's kind of where we're taking these stories now. And when we had come up with the first story, Shot in the Dark, originally it was a screenplay we had written, and we had pitched that to the studios, ironically enough, around the same time that Jim Cameron and Guillermo del Toro were trying to pitch Mountains of Madness. And Mountains of Madness at the time was getting, a lot of kind of backlash because the studios didn't want to touch the picture because of the fact that it was about a $250 million movie. And they were like, we're not going to spend that much money on a horror picture.
Right.
So at the same time, we were trying to shop this around. And so everything kind of just went away. So
Yeah.
we thought it was a really good idea. And the name itself, we would like, it just makes perfect sense. Love your craft, Lovecraft, just the name. Even just apart from the author's own, fan base. But, so then we decided, well, let's just make it into a comic book. So it was the first comic book we had made. And the first issue took me quite a few tries because I had never made a comic book. And so I was doing the job of hiring folks, and some people worked out, some people didn't. So that first issue of the three in that series, that was like the fourth time we finally got that book done and right. And then we moved on to the book 2 and 3, which progressively got easier just because we started learning more, and we started, getting rid of people and adding people. And now we have a really tight crew that has been with me for now 10 years or so.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah, and it's funny. Like I didn't know the whole like script part of it, but it's cool because as I was reading it, I was like, this would make a really cool movie, and but then as it progressed, I'm like, this would be a very expensive movie. Like towards the like the last like issue, I was like, oh yeah, this would not be a small budget movie. Like
No.
Up until that point, I'm like, you could probably pull this off as like a low budget, kind of flick. And I was actually thinking of like actors and actresses that I thought would be cool for the parts and stuff like that. And I don't know.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because when we had initially were working on the script itself, we were like, let's try to see if we could shoot this for like $10 million, and try to hide. That's why I think in a lot of ways, when you're reading Shot in the Dark, there's not a lot of deep ones in it. They're very few and far between. And then you don't really realize until the end what's really kind of going on. And that was more, because we were thinking of it as turning it into basically a showpiece to pitch back to studios to make it into something. We weren't thinking of it necessarily as, telling a story in a comic form where you would have more deep ones running around, so it was just kind of this weird kind of amalgamation of two different worlds kind of coming together in that one book.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. It's pretty neat. And like I said, I would still like to see it as a movie. I think it would be done. I mean, it could be done really well.
Thanks. Thank you.
Have you ever thought about who would play who? Yeah.
Well, ironically enough, I've gone down this road twice, and both times, the first time it was a mutual kind of parting, I guess, just or more of they didn't want to do it with me, and then the second time was more me not wanting to do it with the other people. But the first time it was about almost a 4-year quest to get Michael Shannon to play Detective Ward Lovecraft, and I had gotten so far as being with his managers, talking to his managers, and so on and so forth.
Wow.
And I had done a 138-page pilot screenplay. Well, it was a script. It was supposed to be a pilot, but then we were going to do it as a feature, but it was for The Curious Case of Reanimator, which is our second book. And so that was, so they liked that a lot. And then things kind of fell apart around 2020 after Lovecraft Country came out, and there was a ton of HP backlash, and basically nobody wanted to touch me with a 10-foot pole. So, that's, how your friends are. And then the second time, which was actually overlapped around that time where everything had fallen apart, we had tried to get it back up and going again with another set of producers. And the backlash had still been going on for so long that, unless you're a Lovecraft Country, you were mud. So it was tough for us to deal with any type of studios. We were just getting turned down left and right. And I had written a pilot, and I had done 2 other outlines because we were going to do it as an actually live action 8 episodic TV series or streaming series, and at least start with The Curious Case and do that series, that part of that book first, and then go from there. But that was the original goal that we were aiming for. So.
Yeah. Michael Shannon would have been huge. Yeah, he would have been great.
Shannon. Yeah, that's one of my favorite actors.
That's much higher up than I was thinking, to be honest with you. Like, I don't know if any of you guys, I think you guys have seen Crime Wave.
Oh yeah, of course.
So I was, of course, like, just in my mind was Bruce Campbell's character in Crime Wave, how just kind of like how tacky he was. Yeah, exactly. Like, I was just thinking that would be really cool. And then even like lesser known, like I think like Felissa Rose would have been good as one of the characters in there too, because I don't know. It was just, I was going through it, and I'm like, all these independent artists that I was thinking, like, dude, it would be awesome if they were in this. But then it turned into something much larger than the first 2 issues, and I was like, yeah, I don't know, this is much bigger budget than I thought it would have been. But Tony, I interrupted you. What were you saying?
No. It's okay. I was all I was going to say was, originally when we had talked about this years ago, I mean, we had gone through a ton of different folks that we were talking about, but always at the top of our list was Bruce Campbell. I mean, because for us, we grew up Evil Dead 2, Crime Wave. I mean, so he was always in the back of our mind because Ward Lovecraft is dealing with cosmic entities that are kind of out of his control. He doesn't, he's armed with his 45 and he's got a couple little gadgets that help him out here and there, but he's not a superhero. He's a private detective that's not fighting bank robbers and werewolves. He's actually fighting cosmic entities and giant, sea monsters and stuff. So you kind of have to be Ash in some degree where you're, kind of don't give a rat's ass or what's going to happen, and just kind of throw caution in the wind and, be calculated, don't be stupid about things. But, we always felt that he was that kind of fun character that you just kind of want to go along with the ride with. And, so Bruce was always kind of in the back of our minds to do it. And then ironically enough, when I was working on The Curious Case, I mean, I'm a Jeffrey Combs fan, I had him sign some stuff for me when Connecticut Horror Fest, where I was just at this year. And I love that actually the first Reanimator movie is what got me into Lovecraft back in '85 when I first saw it. So, nice. I mean, that was where that whole started. But because he's so tied into that movie, and it's copywritten with him, his face, and everything else, I couldn't really use him for what I wanted to do. So I was thinking of Crispin Glover to be my Herbert West.
That would be awesome too.
Which I see the Pickman's model just came out with the Cabinet of Curiosities or whatever that Del Toro did, and I see he's playing Pickman, and I'm like, Oh, great minds think alike. So
yeah, that's
I would have been a
too.
different kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the curious case, our version of Herbert West, I took more from the original Lovecraft story, Reanimator, where he's dealing with amphibian DNA and cell structure and all that stuff. So, we do have him, reanimating corpses every once in a while when he needs to do that. But primarily he's so advanced at this point that he's been, creating hybrids.
Yeah.
So we have hybrid, monsters running around and that type of thing. And to me, that's a lot of fun because, it's Frankenstein. And I feel like the evolution is there for that, to kind of keep broadening that scope,
Yeah. So just real quick, Sergio's in the chat room saying hi. We just want to make sure.
What up, Sergio?
Yeah. And Tony, you were saying something a little while ago. What was that?
Well, he was mentioning doing like an 8-episode like series, and I think that's like the new wave of everything. You go on Netflix, and that's pretty much all you see is like an 8-episode season, and then it's if they pick up another one or whatever. But I think that's what everybody's looking for nowadays. Look at
since the pandemic, like I think
it's literally instead of your 20-episode season or whatever, now you're doing an 8-episode, hour long each episode or whatever it is, and everybody's. I know I am. I binge watch those in like day kind of deals.
So.
Yeah, one weekend.
Well, I feel the sweet spot is like 42 to 44 minutes. It's like I feel like it's just over 30, but not quite an hour.
Yeah,
and and I feel like those episodes are super tight. I feel if you go 30 minutes, it's always a little too short, and if you go, 50 to 60, it's like a little too long. But I feel like especially what we're doing with the Lovecraft stuff, and it's very, it's based off the old pulp novels and
like film noir kind of stuff.
And film noir, of course. Those movies were all short anyways. A lot of those movies were 75 minutes, so, for us, if we did something like that, you can tell the story's pretty concise, but we're also, every episode would have a monster more or less, because you're not doing monster of the week. You're doing, an escalation of a case, so each episode would be a part of the case. And then the whole series or that whole season would be a single case file is what we were doing.
Yeah. So, do you think that's still a possibility? Like, do you think that you
I was going to ask. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
no. Sorry.
Okay. Well, no, a couple of things. It's funny because part of the problem is with Hollywood is a lot of times is when you submit a script to, a studio or a project to a studio, because it's not just the script. You're bringing in a whole posse of people. You're bringing a lookbook. You're bringing all this material of how you want to have it broken down. So when they look at it, they're like, oh, okay, great. You get the book, you get this, you got analytics, so on and so forth. The problem is when it gets saturated into the town, and then everybody's already heard of your project at least once, twice, 3 times. Yeah. And so then nobody wants to touch it anymore, and that's why you hear about projects all the time that go away for long periods of time. For some reason, they come back and so on and so forth. So what we've done is we have our new series, which is Memoirs of the Reanimator. So we're approaching it with that point now. We're we have that new book out. We have the radio drama that we're working on now, which will be out in the next few months. And so that's Lovecraft and Herbert West at 17. It's kind of like Peaky Blinders meets Reanimator. Mm-hmm. So you've got, 1914, these two guys that are 17, 18 years old at Miskatonic University. They're both doctors. They're both, causing trouble with raising, corpses and stuff. Then you got West, who's, more pro of kind of unleashing this stuff to see what it does, because he's more of the scientific method, whereas Ward's more of like, listen, we kind of can't go too crazy. You're going to dial it back a little bit. So you see where the law and order kind of aspect of it comes from, and where their relationships stand.
Yeah.
That sounds like it's going to be awesome. I'm looking at here on the website, LOVECRAFTPI.com. I see a little animation type deal.
Yeah, it's like a little
moving book.
Exactly.
Yeah, like a filmation type of thing.
Yeah. What's you're saying you were going to do in the series? There's a possibility to approach in that medium with the animation, or
yeah. So we've been doing that too, where in-house a few years ago we had done CG animation. And I don't know if we still have that trailer up on the website or not, but we did a full-on deep one creature, Lovecraft, and we did like a 30-second trailer of like all these deep ones approaching Innsmouth and him, kind of taking them out with a Tommy gun. People seem to really dig that because we did it. It was, pretty high-end CG work. Yeah. And since then we've created a Cthulhu monster, a Shub-Niggurath, Femme Fatale, and a few other props and monsters like that. So, right now we're just looking at raising the funds to kind of put the stuff together while we're in the meantime putting together like a little demo reel of what we're able to do, and just as a CG, animated project as well. Nice. So as well as doing 2D, because we're looking at like, well, wait a second, will you buy the 2D? Will you buy the 3D? It's like,
how do you want it? How do you want it?
How do you want it? I'll put it on a lunchbox, thermos.
Did you see it? Did you see? I can do it like this if you want.
I was telling my daughter tonight, she likes those blankets that people seem to be getting now with, to put movie star faces on them and stuff like that. So I was like, I can make my own blanket with Lovecraft P.I. I'd be psyched for that,
Oh yeah.
Wow.
That's the thing is, we're all like, we're collectors. So, what I was saying before, where like, I'll like something will pique my interest and I'll just go all in. Like that's the thing is like, if that stuff, like I'm sitting here, I'm looking at the Reanimator, the Kickstarter, and I'm looking at like the statue and everything. And I'm like, holy crap, that's sick. I'm like,
yeah. So that statue,
I don't know if I could ever like, without my wife leaving me, grab one, but,
well, it's funny with those too, cause when I was, I grew up as, working in models, doing model kits and stuff like that. Like, nice. I think pretty much everybody has, at one point in their life. And I love figure kits, and I used to go to shows when I was living in LA. I always pick up garage kits, which I, love putting garage kits together, and I still have a lot of them. So for me, being able to do that stuff now, where you take, a Lovecraftian type of creature, person, character, whatever, and be able to create it into that, exactly. Yeah. And that's fully painted. He's also magnetic. So
the heads, like you can swap out the heads and stuff.
Swap out the heads, So actually, I was talking. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. This is sculpted in-house and everything.
What we did is we built it as a 3D model, and then we have folks overseas that are building it for us. So it's all painted. It comes unassembled, and then it all has magnets in it, and it's all completely painted and done. You just take it out of the box, put it together in 10 seconds, and it's finished.
That's pretty sick. Then you can pick what day of the week you use what head, because that's the glow in the dark one too.
And it glows in the dark.
Yeah.
But we also had that campaign's over, but we're actually going to relaunch on In Demand in February. And one of the things that we had on this campaign, which we're going to do again, is you can create your own head on it. So if you send us pictures of your own head, you can have your own head, scaring people, or you can create a monster head, and we'll create the monster head and have that go on. So,
that's pretty sick.
That is sick.
Yeah. So we figured the next one we'll do is, we have garage kits of some of the monsters and stuff like that. We'll put on the Indiegogo, In Demand. And then, eventually we'll keep turning out these kind of more high end figurines.
Yeah. So is it the same deal with like you have like the mini bust of Lovecraft P.I. and you have the one of the monster as well? Is it the same deal? Like is it you have a company overseas that are making them, or is it?
No, the garage kits are done here in this country. I was able to find a bunch of great guys that they basically do the 3D print, and then they clean it all up, and then they do a rubber cast.
Oh, okay.
And then we do it that way. Which
like a resin? Is using like a resin? Yeah.
Yeah. So we use urethane resin, and to me, Dean, who's my caster, he's amazing because of the fact he's able to get the teeth and the deep ones to come out so perfectly. I used to cast myself when I was living in LA doing pictures, and that was always the hardest part, is making sure there was no air bubbles.
Yeah. That's something I've always wanted to mess around with, like
Blender.
Well, yeah, I use Blender. No, I use Blender, but I mean, as far as like doing casting and trying to do, I've showed you some stuff that I've mashed together.
I got some of your stuff you printed.
That's true. I'll get models and I'll just like mash them together. So like I made a Chewbacca, which is just basically Chewbacca with He-Man's hair and his armor and stuff.
right.
And it's completely, it's a death whistle.
Oh, that's awesome.
Death whistle.
but the like that's the thing is it's like the quality of the 3D prints. You would have to get like a resin printer to really get a good quality one, and then then you have to deal with the overhangs and stuff like that when it comes to the making the molds and everything, and like just be a lot of trial and error. I can tell you that.
What? It's easy, bro. It's easy.
Oh, all right. Consider it done. Consider it done. Yeah.
Everybody can do it. Well, it's funny because we did original cast with 3D printing, and we actually have a guy that's at a lot of these shows that I go to. He actually had been doing them for us for a little while. The problem was this was years ago too when we first started doing it, and the problem was we weren't able to get the quality that we wanted, and it just looked too 3D printed. So when I found this other gentleman, we were able to do a really nice 3D print, which was a little bit better. But then the trick is cleaning up that 3D print and then going from there to the cast.
Yeah.
So as long as you have a clean cast, then you're fine. So. And I mean, I just love having garage kits anyways, because, it seems to be kind of a dinosaur when you go to shows now. You never see them anymore. It's all the fully painted stuff.
Yep. That's completely true. And people charge like an arm and a leg for them. And, rightfully so, because they, especially if they're done really well. Yeah.
It's the craft, the Lovecraft,
So exactly.
Now, you say you were dabbling with like doing like the CGI and like stuff with the comics. You ever think of having like almost like I'm more of a movie fan than I with comics, but you ever think of doing like a Screen Factory thing where you have like levels? So if you buy, say you do a full CG for one of your comics, have like, if you want to go to level 1, you'll just get the comic. If you want to level 2, you'll get the CG with the comic, and then like third level will be a little bit of everything kind of deal. Is that what you were like going for, or?
Yeah. So you're saying about doing like an actual show itself and then building upon the show with the comic?
Yeah.
Perks,
well,
do fundraising.
Yeah. I mean, that's ultimately that's where I want to be. Is I want to be able to create so that we have, our brand, which is Lovecraft or Berserkers, or whatever we're working on, but you have the show or the movie or whatever to go along with it. So you have the adaptation, you have the set and the other thing. Because I mean, years ago I had come up, I had worked on another script that I had wanted to do, and it was about the serial killer. And this was before now where you've got TikTok and everything, but I had come up with this idea where it was a road trip serial killer movie, and he would be uploading stuff to the internet. So it was almost what you're talking about, where you would have like these little diary inserts of his day-to-day life, playing out on the internet, but you wouldn't know what you would get for every episode because it'd be his, and he was a serial killer. So it'd be his day in the day of life, and it'd just be uploaded. And at that point I hadn't been doing comics. It was right before I started doing it. And I had always thought about addressing that again, but also having a companion piece with a book. So, yeah, I'm always trying to figure out the best combination that can propel us forward, as well as getting out there what we want to do, both in whether it's animation or live action or however we want to get our stuff out there. Because I feel there's people seem to like it, like yourselves, but there seems to be kind of a need, and there's a nice niche for this stuff right now that I think is kind of missing everywhere else.
Yeah. That's the thing, is there's so much out there. You really have to do something a little bit different to stick out.
Right.
And
right.
That's the thing, and you have to happen to like catch someone's eye. And like for me, what caught it for me was the cover art and stuff, like some really sick artists that you work with. It's just really like top-notch stuff. And
thank you.
That's really what kind of was like, holy crap, look at this. It looks like the cover of like a really good movie, and it's a comic, Well,
so that's like, it's funny. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'll let you guys go.
I was gonna say that's like the most, besides like inside the book, that's like the most important thing you have, like, because you have to have
100%.
You have to tell the story with no words. You have your title, and then you have to tell the story in one single thing, and that's it. And that's the only time you're gonna grab someone's attention on the initial rip. You know what I mean? So like, if you fuck your cover up, you can have great work, but if you fuck your cover up, someone might never see it.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. And that was, I mean, everything I do is strategic. Sometimes, I'm not sometimes my strategy may go out the window, but ultimately when we're trying to do covers, I 100% agree with you. I think the cover is one of the most important things, because if not the important thing, because it's sitting on a shelf with everybody else, and I'm competing against Spider-Man, Iron Man, God knows who, So when we did Lovecraft, we wanted to go for the old Drew Struzan Raiders of the Lost Ark 1980s movie poster, and we searched high. I mean, it took me over a year to find somebody, and I came across this gentleman, Paul Shipper, who's out of the UK, and he was blessed by Drew. Like, he's carrying on the tradition now because Drew's retired. And when I approached Paul, I said, "Hey, Paul, I know you do stuff for Star Wars, and I mean, he's big time." And I said, "Would you do this little book?" And he goes, "You know what? I've always wanted to do a Lovecraft story, and I don't have any Lovecraft art, so 100%." And it just worked, because it just really, I mean, that's, to me, when you have that coming together, it's, I don't know, it's like that moment when you're watching a scene come together in a movie, and you're like, it worked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It may only be that one sliver, that 1 second, but it worked, so I feel like that with the cover too, is that really hones us as, what Lovecraft P.I. is.
Yeah, it's the artist that did the cover of this, because I grabbed this one at that con. He was there. He was at the,
yes.
What's his name?
Dave Fowler.
Okay, so yeah,
I don't have that yet.
It's like the cover alone, I was like, Jesus Christ, that's amazing. Like, it's just so, and then he's like, he's right around the corner. He'll sign it for you, and I'm like, all right. The dude was so like laid back and just cool. Like, we joked around. Like, he was so chill. I was like almost to the point where I'm like, I want you to do some stuff for me. But I'm like, I don't want to be the guy who just be like, I'll give you $15. Yeah, because that's the thing too. Is it's really tough, and it because you're doing the comics and stuff like that. Like, these artists have a worth, and they deserve it. Because they have an ability that I just do not have. And so that's the thing, is like, I always in my mind, I gotta just bite the bullet and just like actually do this, because I've like, there's all these artists, I want to get something done by them. But it's just like, I'm afraid to ask, because I know my reaction is going to be like, Jesus Christ, but rightfully so,
Well, I think with any cover artist, you really definitely do your homework, because I actually just recently got burned by somebody who
really
showed me a piece of artwork that they said was theirs. And then when I put them to task, let's just say they couldn't. The hands were feet were hands. Yeah, it just wasn't, and the problem was, they were asking for, like, the piece they originally showed me, which they said was theirs, was worth the price they were asking for. And so I was like, okay, because that's what I deal with. I understand, what people are worth, if they're worth what their, obviously what their talent is, and how, but once so I paid them half, they did part of the thing, and I was like, they're like, well, it's only 50%. I'm like, no, I don't care if you go 1,000%. This is just never going to get to where this original piece you show me was. So I was like, I just washed my hands of it, and it hurt, because I don't like losing money, but I also don't want to pay more for something that's just not going to work and I can't sell, because that's happened to me too.
Yeah, you don't want to spend the whole bag, and then be like, okay, I'm gonna put this in the
like, crap, I just spent all this money, and now I have to use it, because
So you pay. I mean, it sucks, but you paid to know that. Okay, so it was a knowledge thing, like a school type deal. You know, don't mess with that.
Well, the good thing is that I found another person that is a third of what this other person was charging me, and this cat is like 1,000 times better, and I've
isn't that
so crazy. I kind of feel like I'm even Steven on that,
Yeah, that's sometimes you luck out in that regard. So that's good. That's great. So it was like meant to be, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Just a little bit of a cost to the learning lesson, but you did it. So one of the things I was telling Tony, because like Tony was saying, he's not as much into comics, or he's not a big reader.
Can you read? You read?
I'm not a big reader either. Something has to really pique my interest. It has to really pique my interest in order for me to actually be able to. Oh, yeah. I used to, but it would always be stuff like I reread the same like comics. Like I read the comics I was reading in the 90s.
I just picked up a bunch the other day from Zombie Hideout.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
but I was trying to explain to Tony that like even though like there really wasn't like a strict or the earliest movie that was like really like a Lovecraft adaptation would probably be Reanimator, right?
I'd say the Dunwich Horror from, what was it, 1968, 69, somewhere around there, or maybe 1967. I caught some of that. That's, I mean, I wouldn't say that's
Like
a full
influenced?
adaptation. It was influenced. Yeah. I mean, they definitely use a lot of his, his text in
70s.
there and all that. But yeah, I'd say Reanimator is a lot more faithful to the material, even though it's doing its own thing, because with the original Reanimator story, there's multiple chapters of different aspects of what happened, what Herbert West and the quote narrator, who's telling the story or going through. So I thought what Stuart Gordon did with the Reanimator movie was great, because basically he pulled out a lot of great little nuggets and then just turned it on its ear. Because even when you read the original Reanimator story, even though that's not Jeffrey Combs playing him, you kind of get the sense, yeah, I could see Jeffrey Combs in that original story,
Yeah.
So,
but I was telling him that there's a lot of things like that are like reference to Lovecraft stuff over the years and many movies that we love. But
color the newest one or the was
the thing,
color out of space.
Yep.
So
you get The Thing with John Carpenter. You've got Evil Dead 1 and 2 and 3, because you got the Necronomicon in that. Which I watched those movies back as a kid. I was like, "What's this Necronomicon? That's pretty cool."
Actually, that's another thing I 3D printed. I'm just going to be a dork and just show you things I 3D printed all the time. So I have like one of the Kindle Paperwhites, and I had like the a cover for it, and it was boring. So I made it a Book of the Dead.
Oh, that's awesome.
So again, I like literally just 3D printed it and stuck it to the lid, and it's the Book of the Dead.
That's wicked.
But yeah, so even like the what is it, the Kandarian
the Kandarian dagger,
the dagger and everything, that's all like Lovecraft. So it's like things that you didn't know. I mean, I didn't know either.
There's a lot. There's a lot. Right. You could go deep underwater, deep into space, Earth. Oh, there's so much.
Well, and that was one of the things when it was going back to when I was dealing with Michael Shannon's folks, and as well as these other producers, is that when I was going up against the wall of Lovecraft's past, one of the things I kept trying to explain to these folks is that you don't understand. You guys are keeping this very close-minded as a domestic project. Lovecraft has the biggest fan base, as far as I'm concerned, that I have ever seen. And it's the longest running fan base. I don't think anybody can dispute that. And it's worldwide. Because over the years of me doing this, which is going on my, 11th, 12th year, working on these books, I've met a lot of people from, I've sold to over 57 different countries with my with Lovecraft P.I.
Awesome.
And there's fan sites everywhere. There's a huge following down South America. There's a huge following in Germany, Italy, Australia, UK. We actually have a publisher at Denmark that sells our books. They translate them into Danish. So we've sold them there. So I mean, Lovecraft is such a universal genre of cosmic horror that people just, I don't know. I don't know if they don't understand that, but they do use it. They, everybody plucks from it and makes their own little projects.
Right. Yeah. The unfortunate thing is that there's a little bit of a stigma when it comes to the man himself. And like,
he did. I mean, you can't shy away from it. He did have some, some leanings.
It was a different time.
Yeah, and that's what I said. Like that art existed in that time.
Well, the art exists.
We can go a whole another route with that, but it sucks because, like you said, you met up a wall when it's like, well, look at the project as a whole, look at the group, look at what we're trying to do, and we're trying to add to the world, of Lovecraft, and
Well, exactly, and for me, it's when we set out to do Lovecraft P.I., it was pulp noir and Indiana Jones. To me, that's, those were the two things that we always kind of wanted to kind of, and Raiders of growing up with seeing Raiders of the Lost Ark in the theater as a kid. And I was lucky enough to show my daughter that she was able to see it in the theater as well.
Oh, that's cool.
Recently. And it was one of those things where, that movie is just so perfect. It moves along. It just hits all the right notes, and you feel so good after you walk out of that movie. It's like I just want to always carry that with me, you know. And to me, that's what we're trying to do with Lovecraft is it's like it's some insane stories, but we try to keep it light and fun because you're trying to remember how to say Azathoth or Cthulhu or all these weird names that HP came up with, so or try to understand like this different symbols and what they mean and the stars aligning and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of information in there that is pretty condensed within the original writing. So be able to pull that out and have fun with it and kind of expand it into what we're trying to do here. I think it's a detriment when people, put us to task for that, which has nothing to do with us personally.
Right. Exactly. I mean? That's the thing is when I was starting to get into it, I mentioned something to my friend and I was like, hey, I'm started like listening to these audiobooks, some H.P. Lovecraft. He's like, oh yeah, does it get racist in it? I'm like you can go back to any artist at any point and they did horrible things that are not appropriate as of today. But at the time that was common stuff. I mean, it's not perfect, but I mean,
we could go, we can go up to 5 years ago, 4 years ago now. Totally. I mean, you'll find stuff constantly from people. So I mean, I think it's just I hate to say it, but I think it's just an easy target for people to pick on, what I mean? And
totally.
And it's really sad because of the fact that he's he died broke and didn't realize how famous he would ever become. So I mean, he died unknown basically, and if it wasn't for August Derleth to get over to his house and get all the stuff out of there he could, his aunts were basically going to get rid of it all, and we would never have known who this guy is. So I mean, there's a lot to be said for how lucky we are to even have the material alive, around still, let alone people kind of expanding on it, which HP himself loved. Like he always handed his manuscripts out to folks and said, hey, if you want to take this into this different direction, feel free. If you want to do this. And that's why you get Block, Howard, Clark Ashton Smith, all these great authors in his inner circle that expanded the universe during his lifetime because that's what he wanted, and I think that's pretty awesome as an artist because a lot of artists aren't that giving in a lot of ways,
No, it's a lot of selfishness and
that's a lot of ego,
it's their baby. So it's like, don't change my stuff. I get it. I mean, I understand it, but it's I'm not necessarily that way, but I can get it. Speaking of different arts and takes on different art on his art, you have the Berserkers behind you. What's the so that's the that's your newest the newest project that you're funding, right? That you're doing a Kickstarter for?
Yes. I guess I spelled media wrong, huh? Interesting. I just noticed that.
I didn't notice it.
I noticed it, and I was like, it's what it's supposed to be, man. Darkside Media.
Well, sitting back this
Tyler Perry's the co-owner of Darkside Media.
Exactly.
Berserker. What's that all like? What's the take on that?
Yeah, so Berserker was when I started Lovecraft, I wanted to have another book kind of going parallel with it. So when we did crowdfunding, I could always just go back and forth with like releasing one and then releasing another. And so when we started out with Berserkers, it was originally supposed to be a 12-issue limited series, which, little did I know at the time going, being an independent publisher going, well, what am I, insane? That's so much money, it's so much time. And it's people don't seem to understand a lot of times when you're doing these comics, I won't see the finished piece for years sometimes, because you're either working on it, you're handed off, or if you're working on yourself, so on and so forth. And so Berserkers originally, again, was a screenplay that my buddy Bill Hawk and I had written back in the late 90s. And we had pitched that to a bunch of people. And then unfortunately, 28 days later came out and we're like, God damn it. So we scrapped it. And then, I don't know, around 2010 or so, when we were doing Lovecraft, we dusted it off. We had changed a lot of stuff anyways over the years. And we're like, hey, you know what? Let's just make this into a comic. So we started breaking it down. And I decided at one point, I was like, we're just going to do it as 8 issues. So the entire story takes place in 1950 on this island called Soul Island off the coast of Massachusetts. And it's based off of a real place that's no longer inhabited. And the idea is the actual island itself was a target range for the U.S. Military during the 40s, 50s, and up to basically the 80s, because I remember it as a kid. And it always fascinated me that we're living on a island, and then 3 miles offshore there's an island being bombed while you're at the beach every day, during the summer as a kid. And it's like, it was so bizarre to me because I grew up watching Godzilla and such, and I was like, I remember how Godzilla became who he was. So if you're just bombing something over there, this is a little sketchy for me. But so growing up with eerie comics and creepy comics and that type of stuff, I wanted to put out a this type of story. So it takes place in the 1950s on this island, and it's about a virus that basically is unleashed on this island. And over the course of a 24-hour period, everybody starts breaking out and turning into these kind of mutated berserker people. And they're not flesh eaters or zombies or anything like that, but they do have enough wits about them to go after you with weapons or this, that, and the other thing until basically they burn out. So they basically just keep going with this full-on rage until they just expire. And so the story itself follows the original cast of characters that kind of expel this virus by mistake, and then they meet up with other people, and then everything kind of keeps growing and building as the town, more and more of these people are infected by this virus. And it's all during a hurricane, at the same time period. So there's a lot happening.
Gotta have the hurricane.
All communication just cut.
Yeah, you gotta have. You're on it when you said island and you said hurricane, and you gotta have some sort of natural disaster.
No cell phones
that they're facing, plus the terror in front of them. So it's like, will they make it out alive?
Well, and that's why I wanted to do it as like a 24-hour, even though it's 8 books, I wanted to do it over a 24-hour period because, you have The Walking Dead and all these other, zombie type, epic books. And I was like, we'll just keep this within 24 hours. And, and so far people seem to really like it. We've got 2 more issues left, and things are just going crazier and crazier in every book.
Yeah. So you got so this is for numbers, the one that's coming up, crowdfunder
7.
Well, yes, it's for number 7 of 8 issues.
Yep.
Okay. So,
and that's launching January 10th.
Yep. And so this book is done. We're actually one of the reasons why I delayed putting any of these books out is after learning from past experience with crowdfunding, I try to put stuff out a lot faster so it doesn't take like years to put out because with crowdfunding a lot of times. I just want to be able to get the stuff out there. Otherwise, I feel like people are waiting on you too long. And, it doesn't do me any good if it's just sitting around. So what I wanted to do with these is to get enough of them finished and then just put one out every few months. So we're wrapping up. We're coloring book 8 right now. And I still have to decide on what I'm going to do for a cover. But other than that, book 8 will be coming out by the summer.
That's
all
cool.
right. So you signing me up for that early bird $35, right? Catch up. I need to get that.
One thing I thought was cool too is that you have an option to buy like the physical copy of stuff, and you also have the digital copy, which I know is like it's nothing new, but it's for like smaller, like more independent release comic stuff. I don't see that as often that I've noticed, anyways. So that's pretty cool. So because the one thing I really, really love the look of this book. I was terrified to read it because I was like, I'm going to break the spine and I'm going to kill myself for it. And I'm like,
you gotta crack it, man.
I'm just like, I literally was like reading it, like trying to like not make
because you can hear it. You can hear
I'm
it
just like, yeah.
Wow,
I'm one of those guys. Back in the day, I would buy one copy to read and one copy to not read, but
well, that's what the PDF is for. The PDF is a readable copy. And it's funny you mentioned that because I do notice on the campaigns that I do, a lot of people do buy the physical, and then I'll see them like later on, like right at the end of the campaign, like, oh, you know what? I just need to get the PDF because, usually when I do is I release the PDFs within the 2-week period that Kickstarter particularly has that window of whether, you get your funds and all that stuff. So I can see on my end, who's paid and who hasn't. So, I can send that stuff out as quick or as slow as I want. So for me, being able to be Johnny on the hop and get the PDF out there that much quicker, then you're not like going, oh man, I paid for this thing and now I'm waiting like 2 years for it.
Yeah, I've been there.
So have I.
Right.
There's been so many times I'm
still waiting on
something
books
in the mail, and I'm like, huh? I'm like,
right, yeah, exactly.
I don't even remember backing this. This is crazy.
It's like to me, it's the mystery package at that point. It just shows up.
Like, oh, I remember this from
that's back
4 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's on Betamax.
At least they signed it.
So we're going to be wrapping up in like the next 10 minutes or so, but I wanted to mention this because you're doing something a little different as well. You have a con, the Crawling Chaos Con.
Yes.
That you're doing, and it's two different locations. Let me just share the screen real quick.
What is your
two different, like one of them is like just a regular con. The other one's more of like an experience. It seems like. Let me see.
You're doing it. You're doing it.
Yes, he's putting it on. So it's the Crawling Chaos Con. So he's doing one March 10th from 5 to 8 in Providence, the Providence Art Club. And it's cool. Like, so this is the art club on this side, right? The really crazy.
That's the actually to the right is actually they're both the art club.
Okay.
But to the left there, that's the Fleur de Lis, which is actually made famous in H.P. Lovecraft's story, The Call of Cthulhu, that he writes about. So Lovecraft himself spent a lot of time there because the art club there is, if I'm not mistaken, is the second oldest art club in America next to the one in New York.
Oh, wow.
And so he spent a lot of time there, and that's where Wilcox, who was the art student in Call of Cthulhu and creates a statue and all that, that's where he resided. And supposedly there's a room there that Lovecraft used to hang out and just pat cats all day. The cats would hang out and he would hang out with them.
I would do the same thing. And then when I was reading the Lovecraft P.I, I was wondering if this building, the building to the if it was actually in the book, because there's a building that looked very similar. It's not. It's kind of a generic looking building. I'm talking about the one on the right.
Yes.
But I was like, is that the same building? I wonder. But then I was like, it's not there's so many hills, like crazy steep hills in Providence. So I was like, they're not on a hill, so I guess it's maybe not. In my mind, I was thinking it was.
Is it the Gilman? Is it the Gilman house? Is what you're asking? You're telling me about?
Maybe.
Is that because I think that's the one that has the overhang sign? If that's one you're.
Maybe.
Yeah, because we did. I mean, I know that one of the things I wanted to do is I do take a lot of when I send reference out to my illustrators, I do pull from different aspects. And I know when we did Innsmouth, the Shot in the Dark book, we pulled from Ipswich and we pulled from Providence. For a lot of the architecture in those books.
Yeah. So either way, I was just like I looked at this yesterday and then I was rereading it. I'm like, I wonder if that's the same building. Either way, there's a lot of really cool old buildings in Providence in general. Providence is really cool. I almost moved there in the late 90s, and I kind of kick myself from time to time, but whatever, it is what it is. And then you're also doing another, like, just a straight up con that's going to be at the Plainridge Park Casino, which I went to for the very first time last month. And that's going to be it's the 1 day con. And it's what kind of vendors and stuff are going to be there, like for someone who's like in the area that's looking to maybe check it out.
Yeah, sure. So what's great about the Parkridge is the fact that it's free parking, which we love.
Yep.
And we're up on the second floor. And so we're going to have about 45 vendors is what we're looking at right now to fill the space with. And we have all sorts, whether it's authors, horror authors, supernatural authors, illustrators, folks have done like little horror tchotchkes. It's kind of a little mix of things. We're also looking for more, because one of the things I do whether it's Comic Cons or stuff like Monster Expo or Lovecraft or steampunk shows. So what I'm trying to do with this show is to kind of pull a little bit more of that stuff together under one roof. So we have more steampunk. We have some more, along with horror, along with comics. It's not just a segregated, you have to go to a steampunk show to see steampunk stuff, or you have to go to a paranormal show to see paranormal stuff. It's like, I would like to have stuff to come together a little bit more under one roof like this, and that's why I wanted to be, the Crawling Chaos con, because it kind of fits with all that aspect of thing.
And it's all kind of coexist anyways. So it's weird that you don't see that as much of that stuff at some of the horror cons and vice versa,
Exactly.
But that's like you can be at a horror con and you can also be at like Terrificon, which you have been at as well. So it's like,
right.
that's the cool cool crossover there. Do you find that you do better at a HorrorCon or a Comic-Con? Is there one that you have seen better traffic at, you think?
I mean, the best cons I do are at usually steampunk or Lovecraft shows, obviously. Steampunk shows are usually the best. And then it goes to Comic-Con and then HorrorCon, which you would think HorrorCon would do better, but everybody's just buying Jason and Freddy, and you know, it's just, or whatever the new guy is on the block, you know. So, you know, I thought, you know, with Lovecraft, I do okay, but it's not as well as I thought I would, which is interesting.
I always at conventions, I always make sure I pick up independent comics over stuff I can buy anywhere else, because I know it takes a lot. Like when we first started this, we were talking about, me and one of my buddies, we tried to do a comic book, and it was, I think we got 1 issue published, and we tried number 2, and we're like, this is a whole nother
there's a lot. A friend of mine there was one comic that they put out like based off of one of his characters, and then he was like talking to the publisher, and he's like, hey, when's issue number 2 gonna come out? And he's just like, why don't you try selling issue 1 first? He's like, we're not even gonna look at issue 2 until we can see that someone actually has some interest in issue 1.
It was like, and we didn't, like, you know, said we didn't know, like, my buddy's was the artist, and it was, you know, we're making it up. I'd learned how to do word balloons, lettering, and all that kind of stuff, and like all about bleed, and you know, making sure it prints in the right size and all that kind of stuff. And we sent it out, and then it was trial and error, and it got expensive, and we said, all right, let's release it in PDF, and then we tried to get it in book form, and it just did not come out 100% how we wanted it to, and how it looked. And then we're just like, okay, maybe we try something else.
Let's make movies instead.
Right.
You're going the other direction. You're going the opposite direction. Yeah.
Well, that's it, and that's like, to you, like you said, to touch back on your movie days. Like, this is an expanded. You know, because storyboards are usually just whipped, boom, 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 set up lights. This is where a light would be. This is like a course of action in the scene. But like comic books, you're drawing the full scene, each thing, and then like you're fleshed out completely. But with comics, you can take huge jumps and leaps, and like from the imagination and storytelling point, because you don't have the things stifling you, like real life, things where, like, you could do, like you said, like what you're doing with the monsters and all that stuff, and that, as long as you could draw it, as long as you could frame it right and tell the story, you can get it done. You can tell your story, you know. So but it is definitely a hard delivery.
Yeah.
Well, and it was definitely tough going from writing from screenplay down to comic book form script, because
that's different too. Yeah.
Oh, you're thinking differently. You're going from unlimited film to a box.
Yeah.
And you gotta tell into that box,
and then you got to work. That was the other thing I understood after the fact, of like placing the letters to drive the action of the scene, and the page, what panel is it going to next, and like, oh, the bubble doesn't fit here, the word balloon doesn't fit here. And it's like, okay, so it's like,
well, that's one of the things I learned after the first 2 Lovecraft books, is that now I write less, if that makes any sense, because I write enough to get so the story out and to my artist. But for me, once I get the final colors and the first pass on the letter from my letterer, to me, it's like seeing you're looking at the final cut of a film for you to do your final tweaks. Yep. So that way, because to me, however the artist interpreted your work, or whatever he's pulling from it, you're looking at that as the artwork, and then going, okay, I can actually rewrite this scene to make it work even better than it did before, because now I've got the artwork to show the story and propel that along even further. Yeah. So to me, that's like the best part of it, is doing that final polish, where you can basically change the story almost 100% if you wanted to.
Yeah. Speaking of the polish on the comic book, where can people go to check out all of your work and buy some comics? Are they available in stores, or is it only online right now, or cons?
Just online on
Okay.
cons, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're at darksidemedia.us, LOVECRAFT P.I. .com. We're on Instagram under LOVECRAFT P.I. Darkside Media, same as Facebook, Twitter. We're on Kickstarter, and Berserkers #7. Actually, we're going to launch on crowdfunder.com, which is going to be our first one on that particular platform, because after seeking it out and checking it out, man, I really like this platform a lot, and it's kind of the best of both worlds between Indiegogo and Kickstarter, and I think even better. And the cool thing is that I can actually add in the PDF link, so that you know, because just like Indiegogo, this has two types of campaigns. There's a flexible campaign, and then has all or nothing campaign. So I'm doing the flexible campaign.
Yep.
So if you go on there when we launch on January 10th, and you want to buy the book as a PDF, you can actually hit the link. You get it the day you pay for it. So you're not having to wait weeks or anything like that. You get it automatically. And I think that's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Then you don't have people be like, where's my book? I want
Where's my
PDF.
book? I don't have to keep track of it. It's done. You know,
that's the thing is that Tony and I, we've talked to a lot of people that have like done the Kickstarting and, and all the crowdfunding, and it's like, it's a full-time job, for a lot of people. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of work. And then there's always someone who's like going to complain, it's like,
oh yeah, definitely.
They're trying to get it done, but I can't because I'm working full-time, doing the crowdfunding.
I want my comic book. I want my comic.
Yeah.
Where's my movie?
So yeah, so in the show notes, Darkside Media's links are going to be in there as well. So if you're listening to the show, you can also check it out there. And if you're watching after the fact, it's going to be in the show notes there. I was going to wait to go. I'm going to wait to go to Tony. But Angel, where can people go to find you?
You could find me talking a bunch of other stuff, movies, and sometimes comic books at that straight show. I lost my train of thought. Sorry about that.
Okay. I understand.
Yeah, we're on a bit of a hiatus. I was supposed to put out another little in the bank episode, but I don't know if that'll ever see the light of day. But at some point, we're gonna have new episodes coming up in January. Because like I said, we were on hiatus, and happy holidays.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Tony, you mentioned TikTok earlier. The reason I was holding off is because TikTok is Tony's, bread and butter. He's doing very well on TikTok.
Bro, he's on there. I see him. I see you, Tony.
Every week I ask you, how many are you up to now? How many subscribers?
19.8K. So
there you
eventually,
go.
Almost at the 20.
Literally, you know what he does? He talks about the movies behind him. That's what he does. He goes through and he talks about the movies behind him, and it's people love it. And it's, it is very interesting.
He's expanded though. You've expanded though.
I watch a movie. I do a little bit. I'll turn to do a little QA and stuff like that. But it's one of those things where on every single platform you had it's. I started on YouTube doing reviews and then went to Instagram and showing off the stuff. And on every single platform, there is, a niche crowd for like everything. So there is a movie community on TikTok. There's definitely a comic book community on TikTok. So as annoying as some, social media is, it's also a good way to expand your platform, because you're always going to get, no matter what, doing all this
there's always
for many years, there's always going to be
a jerk. Yeah.
That's good. I mean, it's inevitable. No matter what you do, if it's not on the thing, on the social media, it's on IMDb with all these people. Let me just write my own little. So no matter what, when you're doing something in the public eye, there's always going to be some kind of.
Actually, speaking of that, during the show, I had to block someone from YouTube because they were just posting. It's their account's called sex-69.fun. And I'm like, how did you find us, first off? And he's just like, I don't, whatever about locals in my area. Yeah, whatever.
Oh, hey, Kevo. I got the link Tony, for you.
They can find you at TikTok and everywhere else.
Pretty much, Tony Has Nine Fingers on YouTube, on Twitter, on TikTok is Tony Has Nine Fingers. On Instagram, it's Tony's Movies, where I show off the movies behind me. And of course, here on the Wicked Horror Show, most Tuesdays, when everybody is healthy. Kevin, it's good to
I
see you back.
I had the COVID. I'm sorry.
No, it's good.
Literally,
it's his 9th time.
No, it's my 3rd. But it's my 3rd. But it's I left since Thanksgiving. I'd only left the house 3 times. 3 times since Thanksgiving, and the last time I went to CVS in the middle of the night, and that's when I got COVID.
That's when it's the worst, bro. It's like, hey kid.
By the way, let me cough in your mouth a little bit. But anyways, for myself, you can find me A Knuckle on Instagram, and besides doing this, I also do Black and White Fright and Violence Buffet, and I also pop up on That Strange Show from time to time. So be on the lookout over there. And I'm sure go to a con that DW's at, and you may find either myself or Angel. I'm sure I'm
trying to point to him somewhere. I don't know where you got him.
Oh, and but yeah, and you go by and support local artists, indie artists, and I can't say local because he's worldwide. So indie artists. There's that. 100%. So thanks for watching / listening, and Merry Christmas to everyone, and we will talk to you later.
Merry Christmas. Peace.